Welcome, age of vintage society. Never once have I seen an actor so talented, energetic and desirous as Dana Andrews, but to say the least he was one of the most overlooked and underrated actors of his era, for a reason best known to industry watchers. But critics think that the greatest limitation he had was himself, the questionable intoxicating habit that followed him like a jinx until he decided to fight back after self-realization. How Dana Andrews lost control over his life. I want you to know, my viewers, how much I appreciate your generous support on Patreon and your activity on the channel. These videos would not have been possible without you. Big thanks to those who watched the video until the end. Dana Andrews, Hollywood Enigma. When a renowned writer describes Dana Andrews as a master at depicting conflicted emotion who adopted a male mask that made him perfect for film noir, he was not mincing words, because this eager skill is an embodiment of the trendy audience idea of a 1940s man. But his entertainment career achievement unfortunately did not represent this projected image, making critics wonder if there is an ambiguity to the assessment in terms of the requisite masculine confidence. Andrews' epic on-screen characteristics of dangerous eyes alertness, lips pulled tight with a well-fastened suit, plus that general demeanour of calm and sometimes indifference, may not suggest much about the inner disorder of a man that has been labelled the Hollywood Enigma. The good news, however, is that Dana realised himself as soon as he could by shifting from Hollywood Enigma to a commendable American success story, because he battled his inner demons and was eventually victorious. Talking about Dana Andrews is more like narrating a sympathetic tale of a decent and diligent actor who recognises his weakness at some point and decided to refocus his energy, including advocating for liberal causes that today made him a model for his kind. Despite performing excellently in classic 1940s movies like The Best Years of Our Lives, which won several awards, and Laura, which is widely seen as his most unforgettable outing, his unfortunate addiction to alcohol was fingered as the main issue that increasingly limited his career growth, and in due course remanded him to roles in shoddy B-movies and dinner theatre, even while playing a role in a television soap opera. Though Andrews became a sought-after star in his era, he was never given an outstanding accolade. His defining misfortune came in 1946, when the entire Hollywood community gathered to celebrate The Best Years, production that he was part of. The movie won a total of 7 Academy Awards, with several of its actors winning a medal or a nomination, but Andrews was never considered as a nominee, talk less a medal. His Hollywood contribution as the quintessential heroic man began with his mediocre roles in war movies, but by the time he appeared in Laura, which was his initial film noir, fans saw the hang-ups, the strains of sadism and tainted romantic aspiration under the shell of a tough guy. Whether he was shown as a flawed hero or a usable anti-hero with those cigarettes in between lips when he talked, Dana's Hollywood career appeared confined to his position as Noir's distressed persona, majoring in moderate-budget films that summed up to more than 70 pictures. And so he took a wise decision, though too late, to venture into the real estate business, because critics think he did so when he grew too old to play his usual heroic role. After more than 45 years in Hollywood, working with famous directors including John Ford, Fritz Lang, Jean Renoir, Otto Preminger, Elia Kazan and William Wyler, and appearing opposite legendary female screen sensations like Joan Crawford, Maureen O'Hara, Elizabeth Taylor, Susan Hayward and Gene Tierney, Andrews knew he had seen it all, as such needed no one to tell him that it was time to make a change. Who says he didn't know what his greatest undoing was? One major reason his acting career remained under and made him infamously famous, he later admitted, was his epic inclination to an alcoholic lifestyle and the tendency to consume more liquor. It is said that a problem identified is a problem half solved. So Dana was able to free himself from the shackles of alcoholism, and to show determination and discourage others, he went public with his anti-alcoholic campaign by becoming a member of the National Council on Alcoholism. In case you don't remember this American film star so well, you may cast your mind back to Mark McPherson, the passionate police investigator in the 1944 noir Laura. His full name is Carver Dana Andrews, born on the 1st of January 1909 at a hinterland outskirt of Collins in southern Mississippi. He was number 3 in line among a dozen, plus 1 kids, from Charles Forrest Andrews, a known Baptist cleric, and his mother Annis. Growing up in a closely knitted religious family, one wonders how and where he took his drinking habit from. The family moved to Huntsville, Texas, where his newer siblings, including actor Steve Forrest, who was also doing fine in the industry but much younger by 16 years, was born. Andrews may have initiated the acting dream that his brother later cued into, as both were said to have attended acting classes at different times at key regional theatres. After Andrews completed his education at Sam Houston State University in Huntsville as a business administrator, he was ready to join the labour market. At the peak of 1931, he took a destiny-laden journey to Los Angeles in search of opportunities as a singer that he was grooming himself for at the time, perhaps occasionally immersing himself in liquor or even depending on it regularly as performance enhancement. Recalling how and what transpired when he put on his black alpaca trench coat, Andrews said, "When I got there, the most trendy job I could get was driving a school bus for $10 a week. I ended up pumping gas in Van Nuys." He had said and recalled that the atmosphere was like everyone wanted to be an actor or something. Everyone wanted to get into those studio gates. He had his ambition intact while doing several tedious jobs, including but not limited to bus driving, ditch digging and picking oranges. But fortune smiled on him when he began the job as a gas attendant. Fascinated by his ambition, the proprietor of the gas station bought into his music career dream by offering a deal for him to work and study simultaneously in what appeared like an IOU agreement of $50 a week to be repaid in a 5-year share of possible later incomes, which he was said to have paid while working with Goldwyn. This was evident in his refined singing voice that was relegated to the background when he joined Playhouse performances. That singing dream was left in the memory of his daughter, who spoke of him singing opera around the house. Some would think that acting was a coincidence for him, but it seemed like anything entertainment met his fancy at the time, so it was easy for hard-working Andrews to ditch music for plays, appearing in almost 24 dramas at Pasadena Playhouse. After meeting and being smitten by Janet Murray, Andrews married her sometime in 1932, despite his struggles for a career breakthrough then. They had a son, David, who unfortunately died at the age of 30. Murray, his wife, died earlier in 1935, just 3 years after their marriage. So, after signing a contract with Goldwyn in 1938, Andrews fell for Pasadena Playhouse trainee Mary Todd, and the two were married that year. The union gave him 3 kids, 2 daughters, Catherine and Susan, and a son, Stephen. All this period, Andrews' unfortunate drinking habit shadowed him like a second nature, and remained with him even as he seeks stardom. While fans enjoyed his on-screen display, no one knew about that off-screen lifestyle that haunted him like a ghost. Andrews was able to include in his memoir how the mental state of self-doubt, which he described as fear, fear, and fear, tied him up inside, as revealed in 1938. The downing difficulty is common in the entertainment business, so very few people gave attention to him in that regard, and it did not affect his roles in movies. Buttressing this fact, Don Amici, who was Andrews' co-star on Wing and a Prayer, expressed surprise that, despite swimming in liquor most of the time, his professionalism remained intact. "Drunk or clear-headed, he never misses a word," he had exclaimed when asked about Andrews' performance on set. In the opinion of Kazan, who knows much about Andrews, he was too refined or too reserved compared to method actors. Kazan once tried his temper by doing a last-minute rewrote of one of Andrews' long courtroom dialogues, and had given it to him within the production period. Coming from a hangover from a night of heavy liquor consumption, Dana Andrews was said to have accepted the script without any complaint, simply returned to his dressing-room with a jar of coffee, and came back in some minutes' time. Interestingly, he was said to have rendered his lines perfectly memorized. Critics think that his appearance that day, just like other times, was not because of his flaws or any kind of drinking discomfort, but a result of his nature and the kind of man he depicted. He was one of those grey flannel suits men who reserved their feelings and their old wounds bottled up like their liquor cupboards. It was possible that lots of actors and even producers had observed him in utter amazement, but never bothered to know how it affected him personally, for the same reason that it was not impacting his performance. In one of his interviews, Andrews had reflected on how he wished friends and relatives had warned him enough earlier, before the habit ate deep into him. "No one ever said anything to me about my drinking lifestyle," he had said, referring to his activities on a movie set, though that did not stop the regular scandalous gossip about the massive intoxicating way of life, as he gets to hear and read about it, and then everything becomes history. According to Andrews, word gets around, and the picture's dried up. But he also recalled how he was once cautioned by a man he respected so much, Mr. Samuel Goldwyn, when he eventually said to him, "Look, young man, you're drinking too much. You need to cut it out." Several years later, Andrews came to the realization that it was exclusively himself that could solve his problem, and decided to do the needful, even joining a strong national movement against it to educate the masses about the dangers of excessive drinking, though his past drinking activities continue to haunt him emotionally. One notable incident was when in 1981 several news publications made a mockery report of over-drinking as a habit and linked him to it because his past drinking partners were mentioned. The source of the news was the then Los Angeles County Coroner, Thomas Noguchi, who was heavily criticised for informing the public that the deaths of famous film stars like Natalie Wood and William Holden were very likely alcohol-related complications. Recall that the above-mentioned actors were Andrews' former drinking cronies. The report suggested that there is every reason to believe William and Natalie would be alive today if it were not for the liquor. That information angered Andrews, who took it as a slap on his face, having repented from the habit. Soon he organised a press conference where he disputed the assertion, alleging that to report the tragic death of icons and national heroes in that manner is more of a tragedy of its own. Though Andrews had lived with the habit for years as part of his regular private life, almost all who encountered him on set or even on the screen would say he seemed to always be in perfect control of himself, rendering his lines in that echoing baritone of a voice that contributed immensely to his usefulness in the entertainment industry. When his studio contract expired in 1952, he was said to have started freelancing and later founded his own production company, the Lawrence Productions, that was credited for films like Elephant Walk and Duel in the Jungle in 1954. Towards the later part of the 1950s, things were turning somewhat negative for him in the industry, with age not on his side. It was obvious that he will not find an easy job because he was best portrayed as a young hero, who unfortunately was no longer young, even as producers faced serious television competition, making many cutbacks on the medium-budget films in favour of better pictures. According to Andrews, they want top box office actors for blockbusters, and I'm not in that class. At this time he was thinking of another way he can be useful for himself and society. Soon he moved with his family to Toluca Lake, possibly to brainstorm more on the next line of investment. Then the idea of real estate investing appeared promising. Soon Andrews started making money in real estate after reading a book on that and applying the knowledge required. And by 1964 he and a partner had already finished an apartment house in Garden Grove in that regard. Several years later he was telling his fans, "I'm retired. I've gotten all the money I want. I just do what I feel like doing." On whether he would act again if needed, he said, "If I must act again, it has to be meaningful." Additionally, that he was earning handsomely with all his apartment buildings and hotels, compared to what he ever did when he was a movie star. It was not until 1969 before Andrews showed remorse for his drinking habit, many thanks to his wife Mary, who was said to have helped him get over the most brutal aspect of the past and into a sober mood. The initial inner motivations for his drinking, as explained by a writer in a 1972 report, may have eventually become debatable. Before he finally gave up the ghost, Andrews had to battle with Alzheimer's disease for years, as it grew worse with days, and was said to have lived at the John Douglas French Centre for Alzheimer's Disease in Los Alamitos in the final years of his. When the news of Dana Andrews' death became public on the 17th of December 1992, his brother, actor Steve Forrest, told the public that Andrews had been in deteriorating health condition for several weeks, and later died of congestive heart failure and pneumonia. At the time of his death he had 3 grandchildren and 3 other brothers. Of course his legacy lives on as an important figure in the acting community, being 1963 elected president of the Screen Actors Guild. Hollywood can be a tough place. It is not just glamour and money. Why, Hollywood treated Oscar Werner like a piece of meat. Watch this video.